Hello, welcome to this Q&A discussion on business process management. My name is Cameron Carpenter. I am an associate consultant with Third Stage Consulting Group, and my experience spans multiple industries from manufacturing through architecture, engineering, construction. I did non-for-profits, professional services, working on multiple projects in the ERP, digital transformation, and change management initiatives. Here we are here. This is a video, one series of video that Third Stage has been putting out. And I have with me Brian Lakaruba, manager for Third Stage Consulting Group. Brian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Cameron. Happy to be here, and thank you all for who are watching this video today. So just to give a little background on myself, I'm, as Cameron said, a manager at Third Stage. I started my career in financial operations world, and I was always looking for ways to make things better and to improve the processes that we did and make them more efficient. And from there, I went into a variety of roles using process improvement techniques, and did that in a variety of settings and contexts. Sometimes they were pure business process improvement type roles. Other times they were hybrids connecting to areas like project management, business intelligence, and large software implementations. So I've been doing that for, started down that journey really over a dozen years ago. I am certified as a Six Sigma Black Belt, which many of you will be familiar with that, as well as a certified process professional. That's through the BP group, a certification that's really one kind of ruthlessly focused on the customer experience, aligning your process around what your customers need, and making sure that everything you're doing as an organization is devoted to that. So through these, I've gained a really broad-based background in process management and how it ties into what you're doing as an organization. So I'll be talking some today about ways that this can help you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian, for that introduction. And for those watching, Brian is a Visio wizard, can process map on the fly. So happy to have this discussion with you today. So let's just go ahead and jump right in and get started with this, Brian. First and foremost, what is business process management or process improvement?
Sure thing, Cameron. And it's important to people listening are going to have a variety of different degrees of exposure to this. So depending on where you're at in your journey of familiarity here, you may have heard a lot of different terms, whether it's Six Sigma or BPM, TQM, process reengineering, continuous improvement. There's a number of different methodologies and frameworks and tools out there. And they all have different areas of focus. They all have value. But for what we're going to get into today, I really want to focus more on the similarities and what they mean for your organization, and not worry too much about the distinctions of what each of those techniques are. So really the guiding principle around this, what's critical is that how your organization gets work done, that is central to your mission and to what you're trying to do. So it's your processes that are what connect your people to your customers and to your organization's goals. So managing your processes, it's about understanding what your processes are, how they're getting done, how well they're getting done. It's about aligning them to your goals, making sure that they're serving your organization the way that they need to. It's about managing the effectiveness of these processes and ensuring that the effectiveness and the efficiency, I should say, ensuring that the way your people are getting work done is really serving what you need, and that you have an eye into how that's happening. And it's about continuously monitoring and improving that. So to the extent possible, you want to be gathering data on your processes and being able to really see the health of your processes, how they're supporting what you're trying to do, and being able to focus on and improve the processes that need improvement.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Then one of the key words I just heard was continuous process improvement. So sounds like it's something that needs to continue. It should never just, we do it one time and we're done.
Absolutely, Cam. Yeah, it's your organization's always changing, and processes that served you well at one point in time may not serve you well in the future. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because the business has changed. It could be because you've had turnover in your people. It could be because circumstances have changed around it. Processes, I don't want to conflate process and technology at all, but technology is in so much of what we do now strongly intermingled with your processes and is a key part of it. In some cases, technology is a key driver of them. In some cases, it's an add-ons. So technology, as it's changing, also has an impact on your processes. So for a variety of reasons, things are just going to be different over time, and you can't just assume that because you got things set into a good place at one time that you're fixed for the future. That said, you may find that the degree of attention you're putting on different processes over time is different. Some may be able to go through an improvement effort and a minimal amount of monitoring to be kept successful. Others really need to be more closely watched over time. Obviously it'd be great if you can put as much attention to all of your processes as you can over time, but just recognizing limitations and resources, you do need to have a good understanding of what are the processes you have out there, how important are they, which ones you're going to put your time and attention to and devote your resources to.
Excellent. Well, thank you for elaborating on that. And I think this would be a good time to switch gears here, and we'll maybe ask who should be involved in this business process management or process improvement.
Sure thing, Cam. So there are a variety of roles you want to get involved in this. And one of the key areas that I haven't brought up in this that's important here is the idea of cross-functional processes and looking at your processes end to end. So often you may have teams that do some work on their own processes. They may do brown bag sessions and map things out and say, this is what we need to improve, but they may not be optimizing for that end-to-end experience. So defining your processes in an end-to-end fashion is a key part of that. And so doing, it means that when you want to undertake process efforts, you need to be able to bring in these cross-functional teams who are involved in the end-to-end process. So you don't just want to have, say, an operations team without having the sales team that's connected to it. You need to make sure that you are closely linked. And it's not to say every single session involving every process needs to touch on everyone, but you need to make sure you're really looking at where are the handoffs and processes and how do you engage the people across them. So the types of roles you're going to have in this, you'll need to have subject matter experts who have familiarity in different key areas. And you need to make sure too that these are people who know on the ground what's happening. You may have very knowledgeable managers who have a good understanding of the big picture and what's happening, but it's often true that they're disconnected from the reality of day to day, what's happening in those processes. It's not to say they are by definition, but you need to be careful that you're not just assuming that someone who oversees the process actually knows how it's getting done. So in addition to those subject matter experts, you should have business process owners, people who are responsible for that end-to-end process. And a lot of organizations may have done exercises of defining and assigning business process owners, or they may not have. So that's really a key role where you need to make sure that there is a person who is accountable to the health of that process and who's going to be overseeing it over time. And the other piece you need to bring in, of course, is someone to facilitate sessions. So there are different roles that can do this, and depending on the type of effort you're getting in, you may look for people with a vast amount of experience in doing something like this, business process analysts, someone with, whether or not certifications can be a good thing. It's not just certifications that matter, and people can learn to do this. But this is a type of area where if you don't have people who have experience in this, you're going to need some help. That's an area where there's organizations like Third Stage that we can step in and help with something like this. And there are plenty of ways to get some outside help if you don't have that skill set within your organization.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for distinguishing the difference between a business process owner and subject matter expert. I know that sometimes there's confusion during sessions that sometimes there's a mix-up. And so is there anything additional that we need to show to distinguish? Like the business process owner is more so responsible for that process, like they're going to sign it off. The subject matter expert, it could be a number of people working underneath them in different departments, like you said. Are there anything else that we can distinguish the difference between? When you have workshop sessions, are you bringing in the business process owners with all the subject matter experts? What's that kind of look like?
It's important that you need to understand your organization, what the roles people are doing and how they're going to contribute to a session like this. So, one of the key things you want to make sure, and I'll get around to directly answering this question, Cam, but just for some background on it, you want to make sure that the people you have involved are ones who are able to both understand the process and be able to think towards what the future state needs to be and look to build onto what are you trying to get to They need to be able to make some degree of decisions in there, but your subject matter experts are the people who can really help drive things out and help you understand where you're at today and some direction on where you're going tomorrow. But it's the business process owners who really need to be accountable for making the decisions and being able to say, yes, this is absolutely what we want to do or not. And they're also responsible for setting direction. That comes from various directions, roles within the organization who are going to help with that. So if you need to make sure what are you trying to get out of this initiative. Are you trying to standardize your processes? Are you trying to bring together different locations onto something common? Are you trying to just aim for greater efficiency and have improvement in that way of meeting certain metrics around whether it's quality or time to complete, customer satisfaction? Obviously, everything's got to be linked towards your customers' goals in the end, but making sure that you are really clear on what the direction is and what you're trying to get to. So ultimately, it's the business process owner who needs to be accountable for that within. So they have a key role for sure in the before any changes are implemented in your processes, that they're the ones who need to be comfortable that that's the direction you want to go. The subject matter experts are the ones who can really help identify a lot of those things on the ground that you need to do. So just to tie it back to where you were coming from in your question, it really depends on what your skill sets are of your subject matter experts and your BPO, your business process owner. Are they going to add value sitting through this time and working through the mapping with people and defining everything, or are they best positioned to do a review after the fact and help set some direction based on those things that are found? And your subject matter experts, are they capable without the guidance in the room or just from the facilitator to be able to set some of that direction and pick the future state? Or are you going to end up having a session where your SMEs are coming up with a bunch of ideas, but then you bring them over to your process owners later and find that these things are based on taking things from where we are today and improving them, as opposed to setting a new way of doing work that you want to get to. So you really need to have a clear understanding of where you're trying to get to and what your skill sets are of your people to be able to get there.
Excellent, thank you. And there was one thing you mentioned, it was initiatives, and I think this would be a good time to maybe link up process improvement to digital transformations. So what does that look like?
Absolutely. So, organizations, the term digital transformation, some may think of as a buzzword, and it can mean a lot of different things. It is to a degree, but it's a helpful umbrella in which to think about the impact of technology and what it has on our organizations and how you're trying to modernize and use technology to your advantage. And as I mentioned earlier, processes are not they're not your technology directly, but technology does have a big impact on things. So I like to I don't think of process as strictly it's driven by technology. It's your processes that really drive what your technology needs to be, and you need to align that, but the capabilities you get out of technology are important. So as you're looking into an effort where whatever kind of project you're doing or initiative you're undertaking that is connected to your business processes, those processes and your business or organizational goals are what you need to think about in terms of driving that forward. So if you're in the early stages of saying, for example, we want to get a new ERP system, we want to drive our organization forward and increase efficiencies in our supply chain, in our purchasing, in our manufacturing, in our finance, HR, whatever it is you're trying to improve there, you want to make sure that that initiative and the technology you go with is aligned to where you want your processes to be. You don't just want to jump into, let's pick a technology and assume we're just going to latch on to whatever that technology has to offer, and our business will follow suit. That's a recipe for failure if you just assume the technology alone is going to make those changes. You may decide that you want to follow those, I hate to use this term, but it may apply here. There are some scenarios where just using best practice technology processes within a technology is the direction you want to go. But that needs to be a well thought out and considered decision where you're still understanding that some parts of your business may not fit into that. You need to understand, really put the time and effort into what it is you're trying to do and how is that going to drive the technology decision, and making sure that anything you're doing from a technology perspective is aligned around where does your business and your organization trying to go.
Excellent. I think the big driver there is the business drives technology, not the other way around. And so that was a great message. And I think that kind of rolls into, how does a company's future depend on process improvement, whether it's digital transformation initiatives or just generally business process management, which is a continuous process throughout the company's life. So how does this future depend on it?
Yes, it's critical. You know, this is of course an interesting time to be doing this as we're recording this in late March of 2020, and we know the world is undergoing fast changes. Organizations, they look different, very different in many ways now than they did a month ago, as we're dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 and what the stay-at-home measures and social distancing are doing for organizations and their customers and their businesses. It's a time of dramatic change, and this is looking at your process is one of the key things you can do around that to deal with this uncertain future. You know, if you're in a place where your business is struggling as a result of a sudden downturn that's through no fault of your own, this is one of the things you can do, is look at your processes and see how they can be modified to meet the changing circumstances. Are there areas where you may have people that can be redeployed to doing things a little differently? Do you have the ability to roll out some new products or services that are central, close to what you do today, but may require some change in the way you work in order to operate? So these are things that are strategic goals, but the execution of that strategy is driven by processes. And so it's looking at your processes that can enable you to do that. You may be in a position today where suddenly, say if you're in a food business or a medical device type business or something that's really stepping up in these times, you may need to then, you're dealing with influx of demand that you are not used to handling, and it may be driving out differences, gaps in your processes that you haven't seen before, or maybe you've seen them and didn't think they were as impactful as now suddenly as your volume increases and your expectations are higher and higher from your customers, that you need to take a look at these things and get them fixed now. So processes always enable you a mix of some quick win improvements, things you can step in and do now just by getting people together and taking a look at what you do, as well as driving strategic goals for the future and being able to align your organization around where you're trying to go. And again, I just want to tie it back to what I said earlier. This is that your processes are what connect your people to your customers, to your end goals. And so to Cameron's question about how does this impact your future, it's the business processes that are really at the ground floor of making things happen, and the execution on what you believe is important and what your strategy is. Your people are the key to that happening, but your people get work done through processes. So it's being able to have a good understanding of and an ability to make those, shape those processes around what you're trying to do. That's critical to surviving and stepping out above your competition to do what you need to do.
Excellent. And definitely, as things can slow down for some other industries, this might be the perfect time when they're having that remote workforce to bring people together and start focusing on these processes. It's something that you can do and something that's necessary. And without knowing the timeline of how long we're going to be on this, slow moving business trend for some industries, maybe companies can try to enhance those processes. I would say, with everything we've discussed today in business process management, do you have any additional thoughts, comments that you'd like to add in general? Final thoughts for people watching, to key takeaways from this video?
Yeah, I think another thing I'd like to just drive home, and I've only made kind of indirect reference to it here, but it is that your people are so intermingled and directly connected to your processes that you can't think of processes as just sort of a mechanic technical exercise. And as you're making changes to your processes, recognizing that these have an impact on your people, the way they do work, and even people have an identity of what they are as a worker, and if you're making changes to processes, that is something that can drastically change the way they view things and how they operate. So it's really important to make sure to continue to look at the people side of things. And as you're doing these processes, as you're implementing improvements, that you're looking at the impact to your people and undergoing organizational change management activities that are going to help you and help your people to adapt to any new realities that come about. And some of these things may seem small, but if people are used to a certain way of communicating and interacting with their coworkers, and that gets changed, and in some cases it may be, again, one we're seeing a lot today is remote work. Someone may have turned to the person behind them to hand off a paper every day, and now they have to do it remotely, and it may be more efficient and easier and more trackable to do it remotely, but you recognize there's a difference in the way people are connecting and getting work done, and the way they think about it. So you can't just assume, just by saying this looks more efficient on paper, that it's going to happen that way. You have to think about the people aspect of it if you want to make sure you're achieving your goals out of this.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Brian, for joining me today. And thank you, everybody, for those who watched. We appreciate you taking the time. And we hope that if you have any questions or comments regarding this video, that you reach out, jump on the Third Stage website where you can inquire on these different videos that we're sending out. So thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you all who are watching today.